Hi everyone, and welcome to What's the Buzz, a program about all of the exciting happenings at Attleboro's Council on Aging, located at 25 South Main Street. With me today is Alyssa Altrui, the newest member of our COA team. She comes to us as the newest outreach case manager. Good morning, Alyssa.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for the invite.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey to the Council on Aging, what you did just previous to this, and
Absolutely.
why you chose to join the team?
Excellent. So I'm coming from an adult day health center where I was the director for almost 4 years. We kind of managed the COVID furlough and getting everybody back and masking, and that was a good time. But prior to working for the adult day health, I have worked with DMH populations, I've worked with DDS populations, managed group homes, done a lot of case management in terms of personal goals with those who have mental health issues and how are we going to help you meet those goals. So this is really strengthening my elder population.
Sure.
Background, which is fabulous. And I chose to come join the Council on Aging because I was looking for something that was different than what I'd ever done. And this has not disappointed.
It's been kind of busy since you
It's been a little bit busy.
Started. But today we're going to focus on a really significant issue, and probably something that we couldn't possibly cover all aspects within a half an hour's time, but that's housing. And there are many, many layers to housing, so we're going to try and focus on a few things today. What is affordable housing? Because people often have a misconception about what that means.
Absolutely. So affordable housing really kind of refers to any housing that's available to a tenant where they pay no more than 30% of their gross income towards their rent. So for what we do at the COA, we see folks coming in for public housing, folks that are looking for a Section 8 voucher or a mobile voucher. And we'll definitely talk about how each of those works. But essentially, it's being able to reside somewhere where only 30% of your gross income is covering your rent and your utilities.
And that can be a huge chunk. And if it exceeds that, then that person or that household is defined as being cost burdened. And with the housing, it actually, besides rent or a mortgage, that includes utility costs, and that's pretty
it can be
exorbitant.
Hefty. Absolutely.
These days. And we could go off on an entirely different tangent about utilities, but we'll try to focus on housing today.
Sure.
So if somebody was interested in learning what their options were, what would be the best next step for them?
I would highly recommend reaching out to us at the COA to come in and meet with a member of the outreach team. It's really good to get a full picture of what kind of income someone's working with, if there are challenges, if there are needs. Do we have to look for someplace that's ADA acceptable? Just all of the different aspects of housing, moving. We really can help wrap around and ease some of that anxiety, because financial anything and moving, especially when you're an older adult, is anxiety provoking.
Without question, without question. So if somebody were to do that, would you recommend that they schedule an appointment, and what number would they call?
Sure. Definitely schedule an appointment with the outreach team. Our main number is 774-203-1906. And you can ask at the reception to be connected with a member of the outreach team. And there are 3 of us that essentially can, help with any of those questions.
And it's important to have that appointment, and it's not because for any other reason than we want to dedicate time to that one individual or that couple or family, whatever the case may be, so that people are not being interrupted and you can have that one-on-one conversation.
Because there are there are some cases that are more complex than others. There are more details that we kind of have to loop in. So yeah, scheduling an appointment really is the best way to go.
What would you say would be an approximate, given that everybody's situation is different, but an approximation on the time it takes for that on-site meeting with a member of the outreach team, provided they've got the paperwork that they need?
So we could meet with someone within days or a week of the initial phone call, and dependent upon what documentation we need for which type of housing we're looking at, and the process can be a few hours to a couple of weeks. Sometimes we find that folks need to go to City Hall to get copies of birth certificates, so they need to go back to Social Security to get a new card. There are some concrete documents that are necessary when applying for public housing. Proof of income, family composition, any assets that someone may have, and that kind of all factors in.
Okay. And then in terms of wait lists, we know in terms of, through the Housing Authority as an example for public housing, there are wait lists. Can you talk to us a little bit about that in more detail?
So wait lists currently for public housing is looking like upwards of 2.5 years. And that's really dependent on the need of the individual, if there are accommodations that will be necessary. Do they need a first floor? Do they need a location with an elevator? And also the flexibility of the older adult to reside in a community other than their own. The broader you make your the broader you cast your net, you know, the more likely you are to have housing kind of crop up sooner rather than later. In terms of Section 8, those vouchers currently are not available in the majority of communities within the state of Massachusetts. I think there are a total of 7 communities that are open right now with Section 8 on their wait list. So that could be slightly longer. I think the estimate was between 5 and 8 years for a voucher.
That's amazing.
It really is a long time. And unfortunately, without something like a Section 8 voucher or a mobile voucher, some of these older adults are looking at their income and their expenses and how much they're being left with after they pay their rent. And it's not a lot. I mean, it's barely enough to scrape by. So a lot of the folks that are coming to us and, you know, seeking an appointment are in that financial need, or they're seeking emergency housing because maybe they were living with a friend and the friend said, I'm sorry, I can't have you here anymore.
Based on your experience, and granted you've been with the Council on Aging a short time, in all fairness, if there is somebody that's on a wait list and something becomes available in a different community other than Attleboro, have you seen those folks accept that move, or are they reluctant to do that because of the relationships they've established in Attleboro?
When we go through the CHAMP application, which is essentially for public housing, common housing application for Massachusetts programs.
Goodness, that's
It's a mouthful. So with the CHAMP application, there is a section that goes over the mobile voucher program.
Okay.
And with that, an individual is able to select a variety of communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. So they have the choice to say, no, I would really like to stay within Attleboro and the surrounding communities, or, you know what, I have friends that live out in Stoughton. If housing comes up, I'd love to go there. So that kind of comes back to the broadening your options if folks are willing to move outside of their community. Thus far, I do believe I have not worked with anyone who's been accepted, but within the outreach team, we have had folks that have been accepted for public housing, but the majority of them have been in city.
Interesting. So there is capacity to a certain extent, even though the wait is quite long. So if my grandmother were to apply for housing and she was willing to go into other communities, how is the family notified that something is available? How does that work?
So dependent upon the method we use for application, if an individual chooses to do a paper application and send it into their local housing authority, those notifications come via mail. Folks who apply online receive those notifications via email, or they can go onto the CHAMP portal and look to see if there are additional documents that are necessary. Are other communities asking for certain other information regarding the individual? So one way or another, the notifications do get to the individual. It's just a matter of what's your preference for delivery.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to know, to kind of put it in perspective about the process, how that works. So now if we could get into a little bit about the situations that we're seeing more and more, because we know based on the most recent data that older adults is the fastest growing segment of the homeless population. About 40% of homelessness is attributed to that population right now, which is
staggering.
It really is. That's a good word. Unfortunately, we have to use it, but that is the reality.
Absolutely.
So there's more folks in need of housing than we have housing for.
Absolutely.
And then the other challenges are evictions, rent increases. We're going to remodel.
And I think that a lot of those factors are what contributes to a lot of the homelessness with older adults.
Okay.
In terms of an older adult renting an apartment and receiving an eviction notice, there's really kind of two notices to quit that someone could receive. They could receive a 14-day if they're behind on their payments. And then a 30-day notice would be for something outside of being in arrears. So the landlord wants to renovate. The landlord feels that, the tenant is being too noisy. Those kinds of interpersonal issues that might come up. The important thing for our elder population to remember is that when you are served an eviction notice, a notice to quit, you do not immediately have to leave that residence. You do not have to leave until you are court ordered to do so. And it is illegal in the state of Massachusetts for a landlord to remove a person or their belongings from a residence until it is court ordered. Nobody likes to go the legal route, but unfortunately, to give our older population time to be able to find alternative housing, that's often the way it ends up going. But again, an individual who comes to the COA with information about an eviction, they may seek legal assistance, and we have resources that are income-based, and we can connect our folks with an attorney who's going to be able to represent them in court.
And that is key, because that can get very, very expensive.
It can.
Could we speak about South Coast Legal Services? Is that the one that we typically refer to the most?
Yes. Yeah. We have a really great working relationship with South Coast Legal, and they have just been paramount in helping us with appeals for DTA, for housing issues. It's great partnership working with them.
And they don't have a wait list currently?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So what happens if somebody does have their rent, all of a sudden the landlord is telling them verbally that the rent is increasing? Sometimes it doubles, sometimes it goes up by 50%, sometimes less, but people are living on very, very limited incomes. So what do they do in that case? What's their recourse?
Absolutely. So folks who are residing in an apartment and are verbally told about an increase in rent should not do anything until that is documented and signed within a new lease. Essentially, when a landlord is going to raise the rent, if it is in the middle of a lease period, if I signed a lease with you for a year and we're 6 months in and you come to me and say, we're going to raise your rent. Unfortunately, we're still in the lease period that I signed for. So a landlord cannot raise the rent during that time unless the lease specifies somewhere in the document that this is okay. Otherwise, a landlord would be required to provide a new lease with a new time frame and a new monthly charge. And both parties, the landlord and the tenant, would have to sign that document for it to be legal.
And what happens if I don't sign it and I'm the tenant?
So I think that's going to circle back to the evictions. If tenants are only able to pay what they've been paying, they'll most likely receive that notice to quit due to, non-payment. And again, we can help at the COA walking down that road.
Yeah, it's really
a scary road, but we can definitely assist.
There is no question, because this time of year in particular, nobody wants to be living in their vehicle, living out on the street.
And emergency housing is not always immediately available. We did just get information that the warming center at the South Attleboro Fire Station is going to be open under certain conditions. I believe the temperatures have to be close to 20 degrees for that to be open, as long as they have, staffing and what have you. So folks can just show up to the warming center. If you're out in the cold and it is frigid, go to the South Attleboro Fire Station.
And they could call there in advance to determine if it's open or not.
Absolutely. Or they could reach out to the Council on Aging, and we have contact information for that as well.
And typically, just so viewers know, the fire department, we work very collaboratively with them on a variety of levels and issues. So we're grateful for that, and they typically will reach out to us and give us a heads up, or it comes from Mayor DeSimone's office that is going to be open. And the Interfaith Coalition, at least last year, they were kind of personing that. And we also had, just to touch on that, we won't go down that path, but the tax abatement program also.
The volunteers.
Some of those participants, they were working at that warming station. So it's different than a shelter. So it's different than Ascension House.
Yes.
I was trying to think of the name. It was on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't remember it.
So the warming station is essentially available during a 12-hour period where the coldest temperatures are projected to be. So I believe 6:30 p.m. is the earliest you can, 7 p.m. is the earliest you can get in, but by 6:30 in the morning, if you're looking to catch public transportation, there is GATRA that is available. And I believe that there may also be Uber services available for those who can't get on the bus.
There might be, if that's the Interfaith Coalition, I believe, participates in the CAR program, which is kind of a last resort transportation besides mass transportation through GATRA, Dial-A-Ride, Med Wheels, and then this is last resort. We are currently not enrolled in that, but we are going to be partnering with them, because it is a key resource for people that can't negotiate for whatever reason those other systems, and then the outreach team will work with individuals.
Because we do receive calls for folks that need to get somewhere and there's just no one to assist. So that'll be a beautiful thing moving forward.
It will be.
Absolutely.
And then we're fortunate in the city of Attleboro, because we have the Veterans Department that also provides rides for veterans and spouses of veterans. That's kind of a separate system, but also worth mentioning.
So in terms of our veterans, if there are home modifications that a veteran needs for accessibility, there are several programs that are available through the VA where a veteran would apply. One of the grants allows up to 50% of the cost of the renovation or the modification to be paid to the veteran to cover some of the cost. There's also a program that requires a prescription from the doctor, but would also disperse funds that are consistent with the needs of the individual to make those modifications. And then there's actually a third program that I had never heard of. And if you are a veteran, and I'm imagining this is more for the younger veteran population, if you cannot get to work or start working soon after, and you have disabilities, they will work with you. They will send a vocational counselor to your home and help you get back to the point where you can manage yourself independently, ADLs and what have you, showering, getting ready for work, what have you. And there are also grant funds that are allowed for modifications in that program as well. but that has the additional layer of working with a vocational counselor to get yourself ready to get back into the work environment.
That's incredible. Is that something that we can assist with, or would we be, if somebody came to us, would we make a referral to the Veterans Administration?
So we could always walk through the individual online with the application if that was the method they chose to utilize. Otherwise, we can reach out to the Veterans Administration and direct folks that way. A lot of what we're doing right now in outreach is very much online because it's accessible, it's quicker.
Exactly.
Especially with things like utility help right now, utility and fuel assistance. It's quicker to get everybody's documents in if we're doing it electronically versus waiting for the mailman to take our mail, hoping that it gets to where it needs to be and hoping it gets put into the right hands.
Exactly, exactly. What are we seeing, because in terms of fuel assistance through Self-Help, they're a collaborative partner of ours, and I think they've gotten inundated, particularly this year,
Oh my goodness.
with applications for fuel assistance. What's that looking like?
So currently, we're seeing that folks that heat their home with oil have received their recertification documents, and the majority of the folks that are coming to the COA for assistance, those applications have already been submitted. Folks are receiving applications and recertifications for gas and electric as their primary heating source, and they are also completing those forms and sending them in. I've worked with several individuals, and this is probably week 6 of waiting for a response from Self-Help because they did move from Brockton to Avon mid-October. So in the height of all of this recertification, moving offices, they were unavailable to us for an entire week while they trained and got their systems back up and running. They are inundated. So my advice for someone who has filled their recertification in on their own, sent all the documentation in, if you haven't heard from them, no news is good news. And they will definitely follow up with you once your application has been processed and they're collaborating with your utility of choice.
Okay. Well, that's really good to know. And I believe either you or Ludi or Donna had mentioned that there is currently, I don't know if they've implemented a wait list, but for emergency fuel assistance, where does that stand?
So currently, emergency fuel assistance is not available with Self-Help. I would imagine that they are keeping folks on a wait list for that particular service. They were, aside from being inundated with all of their applications, they were also inundated with folks who were very concerned about their heat and not having oil, not having the resources. And I think they moved through those funds rather quickly. Not to say that that service won't come back to us before the end of this heating season, which ends in April. But for current issues with emergency heating, it's best just to reach out to the COA because we do have other resources that we can look into for fuel assistance.
And in reaching out to the outreach team, that is sometimes taking a little bit longer than usual. I believe we still have that situation because there are so many folks calling, particularly around Thanksgiving. We just did the Thanksgiving baskets with Personal Best.
That was fun.
And Alyssa led that initiative for the first time this year and did a great job with it. And Self-Help in terms of fuel assistance calls and housing. So it's just, this is a very busy time of year.
It absolutely is. But reach out, schedule an appointment with us. We definitely will do everything we can to get you in. And
that's really key. And it's worth mentioning too that with the start of our new fiscal year for July 1 in the city, the Council on Aging is now open evening hours. So we're open until 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, and we have a shorter day on Fridays. But it's nice for people that do have to work or are still employed, whatever the case may
Absolutely.
be, and they may need to come in towards the end of the day or after work. So.
Absolutely. I just met with a couple of sisters who are investigating alternative housing and then services for mom and dad, and they both work, so they met with me on Tuesday. We don't work on Saturday. Oh my goodness. Clearly I haven't had enough coffee, so. But,
quite all right,
yeah.
quite all right. So this is certainly a lot, and we've just kind of dipped our toe in the water. Although I'm looking at how much time that we have left, and maybe we could touch upon some of the other acronyms. Our world is full
oh my goodness.
of acronyms, and
Yes.
you mentioned CHAMP already. Could we go into RAFT and MRVP
Absolutely.
quickly?
So RAFT is a rental assistance for families in transition. This is a program offered through the state that will assist folks who are in arrears or are facing eviction or foreclosure. And the program can give those individuals up to $7,000 per year to offset that cost. The application process is not complicated. You can do it online, but you really need to meet one of those two criteria, that you're either, really far behind and that's, why you're seeking assistance, or you're being evicted.
Okay.
And MVRP is the MRVP, Mobile Rental Voucher Program. So this is similar to a Section 8 voucher, where an individual can locate housing in a neighborhood that they enjoy, as long as the landlord accepts those kinds of vouchers. So there are endless possibilities of where you could live, as long as who you're renting from participates. And then there are vouchers that are project-based, which refers to a particular building that would be owned by the government. However, it's managed by the city or community that it's in. And most, if not all, of the apartments within that particular residence are available for those who are on the low to very low income scale.
We said it was a lot. We meant it. Well, Alyssa, this time went by really quickly today. I want to thank you again for coming on What's the Buzz, and we'll see everybody next time. Have a great day.